This is Daf Chav Tes in Masechta Shabbos, and we're learning a brisa about whether or not your intent to do a malacha has to be specifically for the outcome you wanted, or it has to be specifically for just the action you're doing, and that action usually results in an outcome anyway, and that's enough. Reb Shimon says you have to have the outcome you wanted. In other words, let's say you want to drag a chair across soft earth. My intention is only to drag a chair across soft earth. It's not to make a burrow or a furrow or a hole there. Rabbi Shimon says, therefore, it is not a malacha. Others say, as so long as you just wanted to drag a chair over soft earth, and that action usually creates that furrow, therefore you're violating the malacha of like sewing. So now we're talking about something similar. If someone threw peels on the floor during Shvius, Rabbi Shimon, we go according to Rabbi Shimon. The pasar law Shvius Rabbi Shimon. So if you interpret it according to Rabbi Shimon, the Rabbi Shimon matir to say Shvius. Rabbi Shimon allows aftergrowths that are thrown on the ground after Shvius. Yat Amar Hachan, and you say that it's not allowed. So how could it possibly be that this brayso is according to Rabbi Shimon? Af al-gav, the Rabbi Shimon matir b'sifchei Shvius. Even though Rabbi Shimon agrees that it's mutter to throw in aftergrowth, just in case it might grow, it's le mishom Shvius mishom kedusha Shvius. He nonetheless maintains that vegetable is subject to the prohibition of Shvius and the laws of kedusha Shvius, or Shvius sanctity. And we learned al div Rabbi Shimon, on the words of Rabbi Shimon, Taharu mitalme, they become cleared of their capacity in order to become tamei. And they're no longer concerned for Shvius. The loy misham kedush Shvius, and therefore not kedush Shvius either. So therefore, in that situation, then we could say it's going to according to Rabbi Shimon. Therefore, the Mishnah we're talking about goes according to Rabbi Shimon is not about whether or not the aftergrowth is allowed to be put in, but it's all about the Kedusha Shvius. So since it's about the Kedusha Shvius, therefore it could be contributed to Rabbi Shimon. Tamun Amrinon, there are those that say, and these are those who say, meaning those in Bavel. Remember, the Gemara Yerushalmi basically was written in Eretz Yisrael, so those are Bavel. Chama Muteres, that cooking in the sun is permissible. Toiledes Chama Asura. It's a derivative of the sun. Then you're machmir. Then it's asur. Rabban Amrin. The Rabbanon in Eretz Yisrael say Ben Chamon, Ben Toiledes Chama Muteres. Whether it's the sun or derivative of the sun, then it's mutter. It's interesting. It can't be that the sun is mutter and the toledus of the sun is asur, unless you're saying pater aval asur, unless you're saying it's a rabbanon restriction for whatever reason, they made a sanction for whatever reason. And we'll see, maybe that's the case. Masnisa pligi al rabbinan dahacha. Now the Mishnah contradicts the rabbanon over here. So lo yitaminenu b'chayil ba'avak derachim b'shvil tetzilenu, that one may not bury an egg in sand or dust in the road in order to the egg become roasted. We learned that in the Mishnah, so therefore it contradicts the rabbanon. Shiny it's different, like I told you when we read the Mishnah, it's different. Why? Because you're making an indentation, and therefore it's a different malacha altogether. Now it's a malacha making an indentation in the ground, as opposed to cooking. It's not also because of bishul, it's mutter because of bishul. You're allowed to do it. The sun is not a fire. The only asur, the only chatos or kares on Shabbos of cooking is with actual fire, with an actual heat. The Rabbanon made certain sanctions and certain other things also, but most of the sources of heat are allowed to cook on. So the sun is allowed on Shabbos. Afilu Amar b'kemach yaor. If you would have been better, if you would have said in hot kemach, in hot flour, there's no problem in digging in flour. So if the hot flour got heated up by the sun, and then you poured it onto the hot flour, and then you said that's still usher, then I would have said, okay, fine, the cooking in the sun is usher. But since you said dirt, it must be because of the indentation that you're doing. Masnisa pligi al Rabbanon tamam, and the Brisa contradicts Rabbanon over there. Tanya will the Brisa. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, Megalgal and Beitzim al Gag shall sid roiseach. One may roast an egg on the top of a hot lime roof. The ein Megalgal and Beitzim al Gabai upper roiseach. One may not roast an egg on hot dirt. Ma'avdina la Rabbanon tamam. What will Rabbanon do there with this Brisa? why can he roast an egg in a hot roof if it's prohibited to cook in the sun? Clearly, the Rabbanon have to agree that you let it cook in the sun. So Pashrin law, so the Rabbanon of the Bavel will have to explain that Chalukin al Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, that they are arguing Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, and they'll explain why. Al Daitech Rabbanon the Talmud, according to Rabbanon of Bavel, Maisa Sha'asu Anshe Tveria, an incident happened to people of Tveria. The Al Daitin, the Rabbanon Dacha, but according to the opinion of the Rabbanon here, Salka Masnisam Kamaisa Sha'usa Anshe Tveria. The conclusion of Mishnah is according with the people of Tveria. So since the Maisa happened to the people of Tveria, that they would heat up things through the pipe, cold water going to the pipe of the hot waters of Tveria, and they wanted to make a sanction against it. They wanted to make a takana against it to say an edict that you can't do it anyway. So therefore, maybe the Rabbanon of Bavel hold that all sources of natural heat, including the sun, would be not allowed, and that's how they have a chiluk on them and on Rabbi Shimon, and that's how they argue. But the one in Eretz Yisrael and Rabbi Shimon and everyone else says if it's natural means, there's no problem. Only a fire is also to cook with on Shabbos. Now let's go through this whole entire Anshe Torah and see what we can learn from it. Originally, they would seal the vents of the bathhouse furnace before Shabbos to keep the heat in. But it's also in very clean Shabbos, and people then go and bathe in Shabbos because it's heated from before Shabbos. So it's like you have a hot water that's left on a beit ka'ara on Shabbos, and what you do is you're going to jump into that pot. So that's what they were doing in the bathhouse. But at some point, the attendants suspected the people filling the furnace with wood before Shabbos. So filling before Shabbos is an act of now in wood that didn't even catch on yet. Remember, we have to learn that wood has to catch on before Shabbos, unless it's coals. Coals burn long and slow. But wood, you can't just throw it on right before Shabbos. You have to wait for it to mostly burn. So that's a problem. The heat like of Shabbos, and the fire will continue to burn throughout Shabbos. So therefore, that's like according to Beit Shammai, and it says that you can't start a malacha on Erev Shabbos to have the fire burn throughout Shabbos. It's like you're continuing doing the malacha. So Abbanan said you can't wash over there. But they said you could steam because you don't need as much heat to steam. So you didn't suspect people would throw in wood in order for them to steam. But then when the people suspected of entering to bathe, but they were claiming they're only steam bathing, so therefore the Rabbanan said that it's prohibited now for both bathing and for steaming. Now there were two baths, one with fresh water and one with salt water. Nextadu Elias Magalin as Sanastarin Bruxen Mustukin. So people were suspected of saying, oh, I'm going into the saltwater one because that retains its heat, but really going into the freshwater one, breaking down the barrier between both of them and going one with the other. The Hein Imrem Luchin Ruchsu and falsely claiming that they were really going into the saltwater one. Russell has a call. So then they said the entire bathhouse is now usher. You can't do anything in the bathhouse. So everything was also Kevon Drew when the people started constraining themselves and started learning halachas, started keeping halachas, and started no longer going to the bathhouse. So So then progressively started allowing more and more. Okay, now let's backtrack, and now the salt water is fine, and now the steaming is fine, and now the washing is fine. Until they permitted the people to go to breathe water in the cave and in the waters of the Tzverian hot springs. But they still did not allow them to bring the towels home because afraid they're going to squeeze out the towels. And also all bringing through probably from either a carmelist or a private place, bringing through different rishuyos, and that's going to be a problem also. Umi hit their havas luntuyas, and who's the one ultimately said now they can bring the towels home? Rabbi Chanina bar Akvai. Rabbi Chanina bar Akvai is the one who Tani could go into the brisa. Shloisha dvar matira of Chanina bar Akvai. Rabbi Chanina Akvai, he was matter three things. Hit their eitza shabiyam. He permitted a reason the seat to be wrapped to wrap food, and it's not going to be acceptable to tuma. They hit their kitsura and permitted a balcony to absorb water or get water from the sea and to hold it. Usually it's going from a Carmelis Shtiach, it's not a problem, but he was able to devise one that was less than 4x4 in the holding place. And he permitted bringing towels home on Shabbos. So Taman Taninan, we learned in Mishnah elsewhere. A Reicheitz, one who washes one who bathes in a cave or in the waters of Tveria hot springs, he can dry himself off even with 10 towels. The law Yiviem Yada, but he can't bring them home. Shmuel Omer, what should the scholar do that he didn't learn from scholars and attend scholars? Because clearly he should have learned that Rahina Baravakia was allowed it. So he didn't hear about this. So So for the Mishnah, that was long ago before Rahina Baravakia permitted the bringing of the towels home. And we have another Brisa, Rabbi Yermi of Rabbi Zera of Yehuda b'Shem Shmuel. And he says, Rabbi Hitter Untuyais. Rabbi permitted the towels to be brought home. So that was done later. So this one was before, but eventually it was the permitted to go. And we learned earlier that a Bezdin that makes a takana, a later one's allowed to lift it if the previous Bezdin either allowed it to be lifted or the later one was either bigger or better, or the reasons no longer existed and they were allowed to lift it. So therefore, apparently, they were able to be mater things that Rabbanan had to cut on before. Tanya, a Brisa taught, Ein mishtavchen v'loi b'chamin v'loi b'tzainin, woman that rinse either with cold water or with hot water on Shabbos. Amar Rav Yuda, Bar Pazi. But this is the Brisa actually also, again, chronological. This happened before the Rabbanan allowed people to go to the Tveria hot springs. The Tani, another Brisa taught, one who bathes in the Tveria hot springs may pour water over himself, but others are not allowed to pour the water over him. Rabbi Shimon ben Masna Omer, Afu lo yasleif al atzmai. Neither may he pour over himself. Mifnei shehu marba es hevel u'mechavet es harkarka. But then he said that there's another reason why you can't do it, not because of bathing and not because of cooking on Shabbos, but because it increases the steam. So maybe if you're pouring hot water over yourself, you can increase the steam, and that might be cooking, and it cleanses the floor. So those two reasons. Therefore, he said it's not allowed. But steam, though, is something that is a derivative that should not be cooked with. In other words, we already hold that if there was water that was on a fire and that was poured on something else, that could actually be cooking. So therefore, while steam itself, in and of itself, is a natural means, but since it was cooked by fire, so now it's going to be in a kli rishon, then it's going to be poured out, and that steam is going to increase. That could be considered cooking. Rav Acha bar Yitzchak al mechsei im ba mal masa betrei liatzos. Rav Acha bar Yitzchak went to bathe together with Bar Mamel in the bathhouse of Yatzes. Chamachad bar Nash mazlif al garme. So that someone was pouring hot water over himself. Amar leisesem kizeh also b'Shabbos. Like that is forbidden on Shabbos. Mifnei shuhu amar be'esa hevel umaki esa karka, because it can increase steam or it could clean the floor. Rabbi Abu, others were pouring water over themselves. But and it fell on him. And he said, "Oh, good. They did it. They did pour it on me. I didn't really do anything. Therefore, it's fine. I got the benefit. I didn't do anything. Fine." Rav Lafti al Michsei im Rabbi Yonah. Rav Lafti went to bathe together with Rabbi Yonah. Chabachad bar Nash Muzalev al Gamra. He saw someone pouring out water all over himself. Amalei. So he said, Rabbi Yonah, this is mutter, less it's unnecessary, and non-sricha shinan l'chiyada, for us to concern ourselves with a single authority. Even though a single authority said that it could be because of steam and it could be because of washing the floor, that's a single authority, but really pouring water over yourself is mutter on Shabbos.